Welcome to the Pod of Inquiry. Ready for some thought-provoking cerebral whipping and the destruction of ridiculous medical dogma? Want to shift those stale, moldy old paradigms? Well then, don that thinking cap of yours. Get down in the cave and join our host, Dr. Stephen Barrett, for this week's episode. Let's start spelunking.
Welcome back to the Pod of Inquiry. This week's episode is a continuation of our episode from last week where we're talking with the folks at TROKIE, Dr. Kenton Crowley and Gavin Chandler, about their unique supplementation of phytocannabinoids for your endocannabinoid system. So please enjoy this great conversation that we started last week and are going to finish this week. So this is basically showing your product, and there's a lot more than just what meets the eye here. So, Kent, do you want to talk about the formulation and
Yeah. So this is a patented orally dissolving TROKIE. TROKIE, TROCHE, is the pharmaceutical term for this lozenge. We've designed it in a way that the mold forms the product, and this is a very pharmaceutically elegant product. It is temperature sensitive, and so if it sees temperatures above 85 or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, they can melt. The beauty of this product is that in this packaging, it can be melted and solidified multiple times, and it's still uniform in its content. This unit dose packaging contains a TROKIE, which is 20 milligrams generally. It includes a wide range of phytocannabinoids, so that it's not just a CBD product. This delivery system we put under the upper lip again. It's between cheek and gum, and that minimizes saliva production and allows for both rapid onset of action, generally 5 to 15 minutes, oral mucosal absorption because it's held in the mouth and not swallowed after a few minutes like a tincture.
Right.
The route of administration I designed specifically to minimize between individual variables. So this is one of the few routes of administration that can be consistently delivering an expected response within a given period of time.
Awesome. So let me ask you real quick, if they swallow that penny, will it come out a dime?
I wish.
We're working on transmutation next. That's in our R&D line.
There you go. All right, guys. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So now I'm going to talk about my N of 1 study, which I really enjoyed doing. And so I guess the dosing schedule, I started out like you guys recommended, pretty low and up to, slow as well. But what I found the best for me was to take one of the broad spectrum around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when you're starting to wind down your day a little bit, but you're still kind of stressed. And it's great for relaxation. It's like, in my opinion, it's like the ultimate cocktail without any of the negative effects of ethanol. And then I would take another one of your nighttime version, which is a combination of is it the broad spectrum plus the 3? Yeah, it's a combination
with melatonin.
Yeah, with 3 milligrams of melatonin. And I'd take that about an hour before I would want to try to go to bed. And that is still the program that I'm on right now, and it's worked out very well. And I think there's a lot to be said about that late afternoon dose, just kind of getting him more into all right, now I've finished my work day. I'm ready to kind of relax a little bit. Tremendous calming effect, like we mentioned before. So that's the dose that I started with. So let's go on and we'll talk about some of the data. So I wanted to measure everything, not only with what you all have with which is called TROKIE tracker, which we'll talk about more toward the end of the podcast. But I'm a big fan of the Aura Ring and the data that it gives me. So this was what we looked at, and my intention going into this N of 1 study was to focus on sleep latency, because it just takes me a long time to get to sleep. And if your latency is affected, then it affects all of the other stages of sleep. And this is not an episode on sleep. We've had that before, but that's what I was looking at primarily with this N of 1 study. So let's go ahead and advance it. TROKIE tracker. You guys have developed a very nice platform that looks at certain different things. But for right now, Gavin, let's jump ahead, and then I'll have you come back and talk about that, because at the end, they're going to want to know more about that platform that you have. So what were my results? Go ahead. All right. So if you look right there, the dot is roughly where I started. And as you can see, this dramatically improved my latency. In fact, it dropped down almost 50%. And then you can see it kick back up in September and then coming on into October. And the question is, well, why is that? And the answer is because that would be probably a lot worse. But that's a lot of international travel and meetings where you're, in other locations, and everything that can mess up sleep is being onboarded at those places. And so this was dramatic for me, the most dramatic thing as far as everything that I measured, because we looked at deep sleep, REM, all of the other things. And there were some improvements, as you'll see. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, and you can see that, we didn't have a huge improvement in deep sleep, but going from July to August, you can see a little bit of an uptick, and it's pretty much remained. And you can see the deep sleep is not as negatively affected as it was for the latency. So I would say that if I hadn't been using the product, it probably would have been much worse. Let's go to the next one. Sleep scores, I think, are pretty important. You can see the overall sleep score dropped when I started the international travel and all of the meetings that I had to go to. So that correlates with activity and environment.
It does appear that you did get a little bit of improvement prior to your travel, though.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
For sure. Yep. Again, the efficiency was pretty much, pretty much the same. Didn't see much difference there. And one of the things that you have to realize is that sleep is one of the things that I work very, very hard on. So, and I'm not trying to compare myself to an athlete that's well trained, but the comparison would be is that if you took an athlete and you tried to give them some performance enhancement, they might only get 1%, where the amateur might get 10%, because there's just more level for improvement. And I think some of this had to do with the fact that I'd already been working on sleep really hard. So I wasn't naive about all of the things, sleep hygiene and these things that I need to do.
Oh, I think that's an important point.
Again, you can see not much difference as far as time in bed, but
and the travel.
Exactly. Pretty consistent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, the next one.
Total sleep, about the same.
Yeah, about the same. Let's jump ahead. Same thing with regularity. I mean, you can see, even though, go back that. Look at all the way back. I'm pretty much in the optimal category for sleep, but you always want to try to improve, even though you're in what Aura says is your optimal. So let's go to the next one. Now, this is where I really think the product was super beneficial for me. And this is from the data that you all collect on the TROKIE tracker, but I noticed a very dramatic, almost from the first day that I started taking this, a reduction in what you guys call the stress score. And like I used the word earlier before, it was just calmness. So like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a little stressed, put one of these bad boys in, and now I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee anything, but there's a high likelihood or probability that you'll notice that there is a definite anxiolytic effect, and it's going to chill you out a little bit.
Yeah, this is very interesting. We'll talk about how your scores here relate to some other data that we collected in our clinical trials with Radical Science, in that you saw a 14% improvement in your perceived stress scale on a rolling average basis, and a 23% in your final score, represented in this graph. And it'll be interesting when we get to the next part where we can compare this to what we saw when we did this on a couple hundred people.
Right. Same thing with well-being. I know that well-being is kind of a general term, but I think that it has some merit as far as, showing the efficacy of the product.
Yeah, and just a thing to note about well-being, we use the WHO-5 Well-being Index, and this is a scale that's used widely for studying well-being in a bunch of different scientific and epidemiological contexts. So you'll see the WHO-5 index used all over research, and that's the reason why we picked it, and the reason why for the TROKIE tracker platform, and also the reason why Radical Science used it. This, along with other measures like the KEMP-QOL, quality of life measure, similar result, or similar type of scales.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of hand this over to you now, Gavin, because this is more of your metrics. Obviously, from the TROKIE tracker. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. This is from TROKIE tracker, and this is meant to be an overlay onto your biometrics data that you got from the Oura Ring.
Right.
And in this case, we're using the PROMIS short form 4A version 1 sleep disturbance scale, which is meant to just measure people's perception of, am I having occasional sleep disturbance? And in your case, you had this sort of reflects what we saw on your Oura Ring on your sleep latency, and
Right.
which a lot of times it's an interesting thing that sleep latency and a person's perception of their sleep disturbance are highly related, right?
Right.
So either how long it takes you to fall asleep, or do you wake up in the middle of the night, really tend to add bias to this particular promised instrument. And you can see that the curves look almost the same, right? You saw an immediate improvement, in this case 50% in the first week or so, and then you maintain that, and then you started your travel,
Right.
and then it went the other direction. But it just shows that it was consistent from the TROKIE tracker data reflected your Oura Ring data.
Yeah, but Gavin, before you go on, go back to that real quick, if you wouldn't mind. I guarantee you that had I not been using the product, the end curve there to the right would have been back up probably higher than it was when I started, because you just can't do that kind of travel, 6-hour time differences without having a major disruption in your sleep for a period of time.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I mean, I know that happens to me. I mean, everybody's different. Some people can sleep on planes. I can't sleep on planes. So when I'm one of those guys that travels, and I try to stay up the entire time and then sleep when I finally get there, and then hope that right sides me when I go across the pond. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's interesting here that even your final score while you were traveling was better than your starting score, which was similar to what we saw in your urine data.
Right.
Yep.
So this is one of the things that and if I'd like to have your impressions on this, because you had mentioned that you weren't a person that suffered from occasional aches and pains that much, right? And this particular scale is meant to it's called the PROMIS short form pain interference. It's just meant to measure somebody's perception of, do occasional aches and pains interfere with my daily life? Right. And you said you started out, pretty low to begin with. But in this case, you found that you had some improvement, and then it was pretty flat after you your initial titration.
Right. So
this, go ahead.
Yeah. No. For me, although it dramatically improved my sleep from a latency standpoint, which I greatly appreciated, I still appreciate. The biggest thing for me was the change in stress. And that's where I think the sleep is a byproduct of what I was doing in the late afternoon. So I think that's why I recommend the dosing schedule. It worked well for me. It may be different for obviously other people, but this worked really, really well. And the biggest thing I noticed is that this is just a great anxiolytic. It's kind of like a healthy Valium. You know, you don't have to worry about the negative side effects of benzodiazepine, but at the same time, you can relax quite a bit. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys here because it's a little too radical for me.
Yeah, here we wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the research that we've done. Radical Science was our partner on a study called the Advancement of Cannabis Education and Science, or ACES study. And this is the first multi-brand, open-label, randomly controlled trial on the real-world effects of hemp extracts. And these, in this case, they were CBD-dominant extracts, or in some cases even CBD isolates. In humans, and the whole study involved 13 national brands, of which we were one, and these are well-known brands like Charlotte's Web and Lord Jones and Ray Wellness, and we were by far the smallest brand that was chosen, but we were chosen because Kent has spent a lot of time interacting with the healthcare professional community in Southern California, and Radical Science was a spin out of the UCLA cannabis program. Jeff Chen was graduated from there and started their cannabis program, and then decided to form Radical Science as a contract research organization that could serve the needs of cannabis companies looking to do research where it was very difficult to do in the academic environment. And what they were investigating was, what are the real world effects of real world products on well-being, quality of life, sleep, physical discomfort, and perceived stress or anxious feelings. And so here's just some interesting data that came out of our product results. In this case, this is directly from the study, and this is from what they called our brand insight report. So this is how TROKIE performed relative to the control group. And over 4 weeks in this study, you can see the curve. This is using the WHO-5 Wellbeing Index to measure well-being, and 83% of the participants who used the TROKIE rapid relief tabs found a significant improvement versus the waitlist control. This is the measuring a slightly different set of perceptions of the users. This is quality of life. Well-being has a slightly different take on how a patient is feeling about their ability to respond to life's challenges. Quality of life really speaks more to how much am I enjoying myself, right? And so in this case, we found that 26 or that the average person their perception of how their life was going and how they were feeling in terms of their enjoyment improved by 26%. In terms of sleep disturbance in this trial, this was my apology. I believe I have the wrong.
This looks like
chart up here.
This is an anxiety, the GAD-7.
Yeah. So this is meant to measure feelings of anxiousness, and
right.
I had the wrong chart here, or I've got the wrong headline. Let me just skip to the next one and see if this is no, not that one.
My recollection is this is the one for anxiety.
Yes, it's certainly the chart is, and
That's what I mean.
I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the chart because the radical is using the GAD7, so that's definitely the chart. So it wasn't the promised sleep disturbance short form 8B. What I can't remember right off the top is what the improvement was because I can't remember which one of these is. I think that we saw a greater than 36%, so I'm pretty sure this is right for the sleep, that we saw 36% improvement in mean scores for sleep. And in the feelings of anxiousness, it was actually higher than that. So the mean score was a greater than 50% improvement based on the chart. So apologies for not catching that. And then this was feelings of aches and pains. They were using the PEG scale on this, and how those feelings of aches and pains were affecting their lives. And in this case, after 4 weeks, 39%, or the average person their scores improved by 39% versus the controls. So this is interesting because this is from the benchmark report. Now, when they did the ACEs study, they actually provided all of the participants with a comparison of their product to all the other products that were used in the trial, and we found this data to be very interesting. So this shows a plot of the final average well-being score using the WHO-5 well-being index. On the y-axis, and of course the well-being, the higher the score, the better off you were, right? Or the better off your perception were that you were. And then on the x-axis, it showed the dosing. And so as you can see here, we had the people who took TROKIE rapid relief tabs not only had the best final average well-being scores, but we were one of the lowest dose products in the trial. And so once again, we think this demonstrates that it's quantity isn't less is more, right? Particularly if you've got the right route of administration. And in this case, they were showing a couple of different things. They were showing what was the form, the specific type of formulation. So was it a broad spectrum formulation? Was it a full spectrum formulation, or was it a CBD isolate? In this case, we were testing a CBD isolate in our TROKIE form. That's represented by the plus sign. And then what was the mode of absorption? Was it ingestion or topical, sublingual, or mucosal? And so in this case, obviously, we're the oral mucosal absorption between the cheek and gum. And so this is very interesting on well-being. And we saw similar things in mean anxious feelings. So once again, using the GAD7 as the tool that Radical Sciences did, we ended up with the lowest of feelings of anxiousness using that scale. And once again, one of the lowest dose products in the second. We were second to the lowest. There was one that was actually a little lower. I believe for this trial, we were 15 milligrams a dose, and the lowest was 10. And so this just once again shows that less is more, and that the route of administration really matters. And let's see, it's well-being, feelings, and then this is sleep. This is sleep. So once again, same looking chart. Best final average sleep score. In this case, we're talking about the incidence of sleep disturbance, the perception of the incidence of sleep disturbance. And so the lower score is better, right? If you have lower sleep disturbances, you're getting a better night's sleep. And so we had the lowest final mean score. And also, once again, we're one of the lowest products. And this is just the pure CBD. This wasn't even our nighttime formula, which we'll get to in a second.
So let me interrupt real quick because I want a clarification on this. So up in the upper right-hand corner, you have the spectrum. You've got broad, full, and isolate. We all know what isolate is. Can you tell the folks what the difference between broad and full is?
Before we continue with this great discussion, I just want to take a quick break to acknowledge this week's sponsor.
I'm constantly exploring new avenues to enhance well-being and address any health concerns. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to an exciting supplement called Stem Regen, which I take daily and genuinely believe could revolutionize your health journey as well. Stem Regen stands out as a game changer in the realm of wellness.
Crafted from 5 potent plant extracts, it boasts a remarkable ability to stimulate the release of your body's own stem cells from your red bone marrow. Why is this significant? Well, stem cells are the superheroes of our body's natural repair system. They possess the extraordinary capacity to morph into various cell types, aiding in tissue regeneration and repair. As we age, the quantity of circulating stem cells in our system reduces significantly, impairing our body's ability to heal and rejuvenate itself effectively. Stem Regen steps in to counter this decline by kickstarting the release of stem cells into circulation, thereby bolstering your body's innate repair mechanisms. Once unleashed into your bloodstream, these mobilized stem cells actively seek out areas of damage or injury, initiating the healing process. By incorporating Stem Regen into your daily routine, you're essentially empowering your body to tap into its own regenerative prowess more efficiently. I firmly believe that Stem Regen could be a valuable addition to your wellness regimen, especially if you're seeking to fortify overall health and vitality, accelerate tissue repair, or expedite recovery from injury or illness. This first of its kind stem cell mobilizer is changing the game in regenerative medicine. Don't wait to unleash your body's innate healing capabilities. Visit stemregen.co/Dr. Steven, that's with a PH, and use the code SBPOD to get a 15% discount off your first order of Stem Regen.
Certainly. Full is attempting to reflect in an extract the full profile of all of the substances in that plant using that particular extraction method. Broad spectrum is trying to do the same thing with THC being non-detectable. So broad spectrum should not contain any THC, and full spectrum, if we're talking about hemp, would contain up to 0.3% by weight.
Okay. I think that's important for people to know.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I wanted to ask y'all about is this study was not you guys. This study was an independent study from outside of TROKIE, correct?
That
Correct.
is correct. The Radical Scientists conducted this study. They published this study. They published it in aggregate. So they weren't publishing the individual brands results. They provided those to the individual brands, both in the form of what they called the brand insight report, which gave us our individual results, and then in this benchmark report where they were showing the results compared to the other products in the trial. And they were interested in seeing the real world effects of CBD products on patients. And so we were invited to participate in this, but we didn't fund it. This was something, all we had to do was provide a product. And this was an IRB approved trial that was conducted in conjunction with the UCLA cannabis program and by Radical Sciences, which is the spinoff of CRO, Contract Research Organization, from that program.
So if this was the Olympics, you guys took a boatload of gold medals home.
we were anytime you go into a clinical trial environment, you're holding your breath a little bit, right? It's like this is really this was a bake off of sorts, right? You don't usually get to do that, right? I mean, unless you're, even in a lot of, pharmaceutical clinical trial environments, you're testing versus placebo. You're just testing to see if your own product can reach a certain efficacy level. There's a much fewer population of clinical trials that are comparing one therapeutic against another.
Right.
And in this case, it was 13, going head to head. So we were like, we couldn't resist. And we were happy to see that we did pretty well.
Nice.
Okay, so I wanted to move on to the next trial that we did with Radical Science, which was called their real world sleep trial study. And this was once again a randomized controlled trial. This was not placebo controlled, it was waitlist controlled, and it was once again open label. And in this case, we got to use our nighttime formulation. Now, this was we were using our original form factor. In this case, it wasn't the 20 milligram unit dose format. This was using our previous form factor where we had our product in bars where you could break off the appropriate amount of dose that you wanted. And in this case, each one of those single little square doses was 10 milligrams of phytocannabinoids plus 1.5 milligrams of melatonin. And so the in this case, our participants included 213 people. Primary endpoints being sleep quality and sleep time, right? So we're just looking for just just are you getting restful sleep? And the secondary endpoints, we also tested quality of life, physical discomfort, and feelings of anxiousness to see if it affected that while we were trying to improve people's restful sleep. So in this case, over 4 weeks versus the waitlist control group, the mean sleep disturbance score improved by 40% among participants who used TROKIE nighttime formula RRTs. And going back to that chart that I had where I mixed the sleep score versus the feelings of anxiousness chart, you'll see that this is very similar to what we saw with the CBD isolate product. I believe it was 36% improvement in that particular trial. In this, it was a little better. We got 40% improvement, mean score improvement, using the same measure, which was the promised sleep disturbance SF8B.
Right.
So once again, this was very interesting that we were using a nighttime formula. The instructions of the trial were to use this before you went to sleep, but people who got better sleep also reported an incidence of a lower incidence of anxious feelings using the promised, in this case, the promised anxiety as a proxy for anxious feelings. And the mean score improved by 32% of the people who used the TROKIE nighttime RRTs versus the waitlist control group. And RRTs, rapid release tabs. We just shortened. That's our acronym internally. And then physical discomfort, that once again, they use the PEG-3 scale to use to measure this. And this was also interesting that people who were just getting better sleep also seem to have an effect on their perception of physical discomfort. And so people who were taking this product saw their physical discomfort scores, or PEG-3 scale scores, improved by 20% over the 4-week testing period. And that's versus the control group. And then once again, the quality of life measure, in this case, they use the ChemQOL scale. And this is just like, okay, how are these relating? How is an improvement in sleep relating to how you're perceived about your perceived quality of life? And in this case, the average score improved by 21%. So some other key findings from the real world sleep trial is that on average, participants who completed the real-world sleep study reported 56 more minutes of sleep per night after taking TROKIE nighttime CBD rapid release tabs throughout the study. So this is versus the waitlist control. This was an interesting result that we were just waiting for them to. They were looking at these other types of ways to interpret the data. And this was just a very interesting result of some extra data that they were capturing from the participants. 70% of those who took this product during the trial reported experiencing a clinically meaningful improvement of their sleep scores. And what clinically meaningful improvement, they use the standard statistical term in clinical trials, which I believe was a 1.5 standard or 1.5 standard deviation improvement from the average. So 1.5 standard deviations are 70% of people reported having a 1.5, at least a 1.5 standard deviation improvement from the average.
All right.
And then 65% of patients reported having so 65% of participants that reported having unhealthy levels of anxious feelings when they started the trial. Okay, so this is self-reported that they had anxious feelings. They were under stress. They said, so they endorsed for that beforehand. 65% of those people experience clinically meaningful improvement of their scores. So all the people who endorsed for having stress issues or having feelings of anxiousness, 65% of those people had a 1.5 standard deviation improvement in their scores after the trial. And this is all really interesting, given that it was a sleep study, right? Their sleep improved, and these other things improved. Couple other interesting things, just going along the same thing. 41% of participants that endorsed for having long-term physical discomfort. So they just they reported having problems with physical discomfort or aches and pains on a regular basis. 41 of those percent of those participants improved, having 1.5% or 1.5 standard deviation improvement to their PEG scores over the course of the trial. So once again, sleep improving other parts of their life. And then the speed of effect. This is a really interesting one. 82% of participants noticed an effect within 60 minutes of taking this product. And this is a chart of the same thing, and it reiterates with the second point, where we see that there was 7% of people that noticed an effect within 10 minutes. About 37% noticed it within 30 minutes, and a full 82% noticed it within an hour. And then a smattering of other effects that noticed it either longer, weren't sure, or it varied.
Got it.
Right.
And then this is the one last chart that we wanted to share about this particular study. It was very interesting to note the dosing. Mm-hmm. And what the average dosing was. And in this case, and this is, by the way, how we came up with our current 20 milligram dose, was these direct results, which was as people were allowed to titrate their dose in this trial. So we basically told people to start with 1 square and then move up to 2 squares or whatever they felt that they needed. And that the average person was taking 1.5 doses by the end of the trial, and really after 2 weeks, that they had sort of zeroed in on what they found was the best. And so this equates to 15 milligrams and 2.25 milligrams of melatonin per day. We looked at that distribution. Obviously, this was the mean, so we looked at the distribution of those results, and we said, okay, for our unit dose, we're going to make a 20 milligram that somebody can break in half. And so, as you know, in our unit dose packaging, that you can break a single 20 milligram dose into half. And so, this data really informed how we made that unit dose for our nighttime formula.
Yeah, and I have to tell everybody that the worst adverse effect that I had in my N of 1 study was when I was opening 1 and it broke into 2. It's like, oh my God, what do I do now? So I realized that for the best effect, I'd put 1 on each side, so I got the stereo effect. And I overcame that adverse effect.
What I'd like to know is, did that actually increase the speed of onset? Right?
I don't know.
You might have improved the surface area.
I don't know. It might have just ameliorated the stress from having an adverse event.
Excellent. Okay, so here, Stephen, you had asked us to talk and provide some material about how TROKIE likes to support clinicians.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, this is something that anybody who's treating chronic pain or, peripheral neuropathy, all of these different things that are so difficult that have a tremendous effect on the psychology of the patient are going to want to get integrated into this program for their patients. So, Gavin, why don't you explain how you guys help us get this going for them?
So sure. So we've got a variety of tools and programs to assist clinicians in implementing TROKIE into their practice. And one of the main things that we like to talk about is the TROKIE Clinician of Excellence program. And it includes a variety of things, tools for helping doctors to implement this into their program, because we know they're very busy, right? All you clinicians are super busy. And so one of the things that we like to do is help to facilitate education of the patients and engagement with the patients. And we create custom landing pages for all of our clinicians that subscribe for this program. This is an example of yours here for the U.S. Neuropathy Centers and the Plot of Inquiry. This allows patients to be able to be related directly to their caregiver in our system, right? And so
Right.
we can customize messaging and a bunch of other things. There's all sorts of stuff that comes with the Clinician of Excellence program. We have in-office signage, we have starting products packages, we have physical and digital brochures, we have QR codes that link all of this stuff together, so that we can provide feedback and data to the clinician, and they can understand how am I doing in terms of introducing these products to my patients. And so, our clinicians, this is all based on feedback from our healthcare providers, and they said, what do we need? What would be the best for us to be able to deploy these and implement this in our practice? And so we created all these things. TROKIE Tracker is one of the things that we created, and you asked us to discuss that before. So TROKIE Tracker is a mobile assessment tool. So it allows the patients to establish a baseline for their wellness axes, and specifically in TROKIE Tracker, we're tracking well-being, we're tracking stress, we're tracking sleep disturbance, and we're tracking physical comfort, right? And in our case, we use the WHO Wellbeing Index. We use the Perceived Stress Scale, which is a 7-question scale, and then we use the PROMIS scales for 4-question scales for both sleep disturbance and physical discomfort. And so what it allows the patient to do is to, and their clinician, is to establish a baseline before they start their therapy, and then track their progress. Because not all patients respond the same way. Not all that it helps them to understand how their dose titration is working, helps the clinician to advise the patient on that. And so that's what TROKIE Tracker is all about. And already the system allows, just as an aside, the system allows for this is in partnership with a group called People Science, and the TROKIE Tracker study. So we talked a little bit about the TROKIE Tracker tool prior in the discussion, and TROKIE Tracker is really meant to be an assessment and engagement tool for both the clinician and for the patients. And so it allows the patients to establish a baseline for several health axes, including well-being, sleep disturbance, perceived stress, and feelings of physical discomfort. And it allows them to establish that baseline and then track their progress over time. So that when they're in the process of titrating their dose or working on which formulation works best for them, depending on which one of those they're focused on, it allows both the clinician and the patient to track their progress. Also, that system now allows for patients to integrate biometric devices. So our partnership is with People Science, and the app where the TROKIE Tracker tool is domiciled is called Chloe, and it's available for both Android devices and iOS Apple devices. And that system now integrates the Apple Health Suite of applications. So it will, anything that integrates biometrics devices like the Fitbit or the Apple Watch or the Oura Ring or the Garmin telemetrics or biometric devices, they can capture that data inside of the Chloe app and overlay that stuff on top of their TROKIE Tracker data. So it's a really robust tool for being able to track progress from a starting point. And then finally, in terms of supporting clinicians, we offer managed content services. So this is a new thing for us that we're rolling out now, and it's going to become more advanced as we go along. And that is, we're providing content to the doctors in a digital form that they can send out to their patients, or we can take over that process and communicate educational pieces on TROKIE or on their personalized medicine goals directly with their patients. So these are all tools that we're helping, that we're using to and deploying to help clinicians implement TROKIE in their practice.
Yeah, and one thing, while you're flipping to the next page, I want to emphasize how important it is in clinical practice to be able to have a patient be able to measure their biometrics, because that is the ultimate in trying to get compliance with your treatment plan. So this is an excellent platform.
Yeah, and we like to offer these things in packages. So just for clinicians that are interested in this, and they'll be able to, we're going to provide a way for them to sign up here in a moment. We like to put these together into bundles. They can buy these things or order them from us a la carte. But we offer a bundled starter package, which includes a product starter kit. It gives them the landing page for their patients to interact with. It gives them a 1-year subscription to the TROKIE Tracker platform, which their patients can use for free. And that it also provides a 1-year subscription to the Cannabis and Cannabinoids Research Journal. So this is an online subscription. When they get that subscription, it also gives them access to all of the historical journal issues that Library Publishing provides. So it's a great package that we recommend all of our starting clinicians use. And then we also provide them training as we're getting them spooled up and a bunch of other content.
Excellent.
And so another thing that we are working on and that we're doing now is that we like to support clinicians who are part of large groups of associations. And so we call this our network affiliate programs, and the Pod of Inquiry is one. Stephen, you're part of a larger community in the Association for Extremity Nerve Surgeons, your community of clinicians that follow you on the Pod of Inquiry, and we're also part. We're part of these associations in other groups, on the Seed Scientific Research and Performance Institute being another one that is well known in the functional medicine world, and we create a platform for those associations to come together, and this is how we do it. So in this case, this is our network platform where groups can come together and they can register and be part of a single group, and we provide content and services to them as an association. And they also get special pricing on all of our services by being part of a network.
Very good. Very good.
And so, as a final statement, if you're a clinician or a patient and you're interested in TROKIE, you can click this link, and it'll take you to the Stephen Barrett portal that we've created that allows both professionals and their patients to come in and to register with us and get involved with the TROKIE program.
Well, Gavin, you've made it pretty simple for people to basically enroll and for clinicians to get their patients involved. So this is really appreciated from the clinical side because everyone is so busy. It's just hard to keep up with everything. So thank you guys for doing this.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We really enjoyed talking with you and just the process of working with you on your N=1 study and your practice has been fabulous for us.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
And now a message from our sponsor. Well, folks, if you're over 40 and you're not using a supplement to augment nitric oxide production, you should really rethink that. This molecule is absolutely imperative to health, not to mention the cardio protection. Nitric oxide is a physiological molecule that does so many things for your health. I never miss a day of nitric oxide supplementation. That's how important it is. Long overdue, there is now a nitric oxide replenishment formula without the fear of oxalates. Approved Medical Solutions does not use beets, spinach, or arginine. Approved Medical Solutions is proud to offer our audience their oxalate-free nitric oxide formula. If you are not a healthcare provider, you can still get started by going to approvedmedicalsolutions.com and use the code SBarrett at checkout, and you will receive a 10% medical discount savings. For licensed practitioners, just go to approvedmedicalsolutions.com and register. They have unique bundles for all of the full-fledged spelunkers of the Pod of Inquiry. Use Pod of Inquiry at checkout after registration, and I am certain you will be pleased not only for yourself, but for all of your patients. Here's a little secret. If you order their testing strips and test every patient for a few clinic days, you will see that nearly every one of them will be deficient. When they see this result, they will want you to start them on it immediately. Now, thanks to Approved Medical Solutions, you can give them the best care without the worry of oxalates. Thanks for watching. You can start today. I hope you all enjoyed today's show and got some truly empowering knowledge out of it. You can always follow up on anything we talked about in the show notes found at our website, podofinquiry.com. If you think you might have tickled just a few neurons inside that cerebral cortex, please spread the word to your friends and colleagues and tell them that they need to get spelunking. Also, if you can take a minute to leave a review on your podcast provider of choice, and especially Apple Podcasts, that would greatly help the show and be so appreciated, provided it's positive. And if not, then just keep your pie hole shut and stay down in that cave. Let's keep spelunking.
This podcast is designed for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical or surgical consulting advice or imply a development of any physician-patient relationship. The opinions of guests who are featured on the show are not necessarily the opinions of Dr. Barrett or the production team. This podcast is owned solely by Barrett Medical and Surgical Media, LLC. While the show is highly oriented for physicians and healthcare providers, anyone interested in the improvement of human performance and understanding will find this a welcome goblet to sip from, or guzzle. However, no representation or warranties are made in any way whatsoever on this podcast for any products, techniques, or other things discussed. Invited guests are not vetted by the Pod of Inquiry for their qualifications and may have a direct or indirect financial interest in what they present and discuss on the show. The Pod of Inquiry disclaims any responsibility from anything taken from the show and used personally or professionally. It is a responsibility of the listener to perform their own due diligence prior to the implementation of any ideas, products, techniques, or anything talked about on the show.